Vineyards, a rare sight in Ugandan farming, barely cultivated on a large scale due to limited information about the crop, a reliable export market, and the underdeveloped wine-making industry. Amidst these shortcomings, however, the crop is largely consumed on the streets, supermarkets, and homesteads. But more importantly is that it creates a viable space for the endless opportunities in winemaking. Commercially grown table grapes that are bred for their sweetness, they have to receive the right amount of water, the right amount of sunlight, the right pruning at the right times to actually achieve their optimal sweetness level. Tonight, how to make money from maintaining a good vineyard. Coming up.
Grapes are a permanent crop because its lifespan goes up to 100 years plus. We know its market, even as fruit, is very, very available. It is drought resistant. Much as you can see the hill here, water can only be found down in the valleys. But whether it is sunshine or rain, these grapes remain very fresh and they keep growing. So they do not require a lot of water once they have started growing.
Ham Ahimbisibwe is a teacher by profession. Born in Bara district, he always had a knack for agriculture as a retirement plan when he was done with education. In his quest for a unique crop, Ham loved the opportunity of value addition he could add to grapes. From a small domestic sample, he decided to scale up the venture to 10 acres.
We came up here and bought this piece of land intentionally to start the project of growing grapes. Then we engaged the local community for labor, and the tilling was done by use of hose and mattocks, and because it is very stony. And then after some time we engaged some members of the local community to get for us the seedlings, and then we dug the pits, wide, deep pits, and we put in manure, and then we put in the seedlings, and off we started.
Many home growers plant grapes for home consumption, but Ham looked beyond a home fruit to consider growing a vineyard.
Grapes are a permanent crop because its lifespan goes up to 100 years plus. We know its market, even as fruit, is very, very available. It is drought resistant. Much as you can see the hill here, water can only be found down in the valleys. But whether it is sunshine or rain, these grapes remain very fresh and they keep growing. So they do not require a lot of water once they have started growing.
Grapes are said to grow in slightly rocky soils with a good drainage and a pH just above 7. For the best results, take a soil sample to an agriculture extension office or soil testing laboratory for a complete soil test. Ham attributes part of the reason for his yield to this aspect.
Even before we came to start the project, there was a promoter of grape growing, Mr. Cyrus Kamanyiro. He had been promoting growing of grapes from around, and he brought experts. They took soil samples from this area and declared the area around to be the best for grape growing, especially with the stony soils and with the high drainage. And again, in this place, such a hill, you don't find a lot of other crops growing well. But with this rare and precious crop growing here, I think it is a very big advantage.
Grapes are certainly a multi-purpose fruit, being used for wine, baked goods, jams, and for eating fresh off the vine. With their ability to grow in many places around the world, how do we start growing grapes?
When you are going to start growing grapes, first of all you need primary tilling. rest for some time as you prepare for seedlings. We buy seedlings, and on our part now, we have also started preparing seedlings. After pruning for the next season, the twigs are prepared into seedlings for either other farmers who want them or even when we want to expand the garden. Then before you put the seedlings in the pits, after digging out pits, you put manure, especially we use cow dung or chicken droppings, as you may find available around. We buy it from those farmers who have. And then you let the soil again rest, and then you bring the seedlings. And on planting the seedlings, you do irrigate so that the young seedling, the tender seedling, can really take root. It is best to plant during rainy season, especially like February and March, or September and October, so that the crop can pick very fast and grow with much foliage to give it food, and it grows well. But otherwise, when it has hard firm roots, the drought cannot really scare it.
As the name implies, grapevines grow upwards along a support structure. If you are planting your grapes along a fence or other structure, construct or buy a trellis for them to grow along. Ham recommends.
You first get stakes. The moment they start shooting up, you get stakes, and you support the seedling until it grows up to 6 or 8 feet. Then you trim it on the top to stop it from growing and growing, because it is a crop which has apex dominance. It keeps growing, and in that case it cannot flower. So you trim it and give it time. After 1.5 years, you trim it further, and when you want to use this system of putting the seedling on line or wires, you bend it and fix it to the wire. Within 18 months, you get the flowers, and after 4 months, you harvest the fruit. When you are using lines like here or wires, not the overhead canopy, you need the spacing of 6 feet between crop, and then 4 feet between the rows. And in an acre, you can have at least 500 seedlings. And the seedling, for us who prepare, the production cost is at least 3,000 per seedling. But when you are buying on the market, it goes up to 5,000 per seedling.
Coming up, caring for grapevine to make an income. Watering, weeding, pruning, bookkeeping, disease and pest control are key elements to maintaining a healthy grapevine. If well catered for, this raises the sugar content of your grapes, providing a better competitive market value for your product. Ham takes us through the stages of maintenance.
When you have put your seedling in the soil, within 1 month, it will pick. And all you need at least is to make sure there is no weed growing around it, because one, it will choke it, and secondly, it will harbor pests. Another bit of maintenance you will need is to spray in order to minimize the attack of pests and even leaf rust and other diseases that attack the crop. Then as soon as it comes to 3-4 months, depending on how fast it is growing, you need those stakes Just simple pieces of wood. You plant, you place them along, against the crop, and you tie the crop along that stake so that it can get that support and it remains upright. Good thing with the grape, it will normally grow tendrils that will help to cling around the stave, the stake you put there. Unfortunately, if you rely so much on those tendrils, they can grow thick and choke the crop itself, especially when they wind around it. So we tend to prune them as well, especially when they're growing thicker.
To ensure that fruits develop high sugar content, plant the vines where they will receive maximum sun and heat. Planting vines against a wall or on a slope with the sun's exposure enables hardening when the plant rises as harm elaborates.
After the crop has grown to 6 feet or even 8, depending on the length of the stake, you trim it at the top to stop it from growing on and on. And then you remove the leaves and it tends to harden, and you make sure you prune it all the time so that it doesn't bring shoots that will end up growing without aim. The stem itself needs to first grow thick and strong. That's why it takes up to 14 months or 15 to be ready for further pruning, and you allow it now to sprout with flowers because the stem will be strong enough to support even the fruit that will grow.
Grapevines are woody tree climbers. Among the several adaptive mechanisms of climbing is the stem twining, attaching themselves for support with tendrils. In commercial grape production, vines are trained and pruned upright onto a trellis support structure. This enables the vine to retain a similar shape year after year in order to facilitate cultural operations, including harvest.
Before you prune it for flowering, you need poles now. Some people use a raised canopy and the crop goes overhead, and then the fruit will normally flower from under the canopy. But it will remain in shade and the sunlight may not reach it and it needs it. So this method of using wires will keep the crop low, and we like it here because when you are spraying, there is no danger of the chemical either dripping into your head or even into your face. So you can manage it quite well. And again, this method enables you to plant more crops in an acre, and it is relatively affordable, more affordable than the other one of the canopy. Then the canopy becomes dangerous in case of wind. If that whole canopy collapses, it can lead to real loss. But in this case, it cannot happen. Even when there is wind, it can be managed. When you do the final pruning to induce the flowering, that is approximately at 18 months. So you expect at the end of 2 years exactly, 24 months, to have your crop, your fruit, the first fruit ready for picking. It flowers in bunches, small bunches as you can see. And when the fruit turns black, not just purple, real black, we may say it is a deep purple, but it is actually black. And that's when it is ready. The sugar content is highest. And when you press it, even the sap comes out very quickly. So that's when we harvest the fruit.
According to Ham, you will invest most of your time in raising the crop from the nursery to the flowering, but how much care will you need to break even?
Some people have described the care you give to the grapes like the care you would give to a Frisian cow. On daily basis, you need to check in because you do not encourage or allow any premature shooting. You have to keep removing the young buds that come in prematurely because it shoots quickly, especially when you have cut it or pruned it. So you have to discourage that until you feel it is ready, and it is ready for flowering especially. So on a daily basis, somebody has to come and visit the farm. And unless you have done the harvesting and you have removed all the leaves and it is just in a state when it is waiting for pruning in order to sprout again. But you need to visit daily, check on the pores. Then if a branch of a crop has fallen off the line, you put it back, because these fruits are also tender. Once they fall down, you lose them. So on daily basis, then check if there is any disease that might be attacking, and you quickly spray. But it is otherwise a good crop, and when you have maintained it to a mature stage, it's all about managing a season, and we normally have 2 seasons a year at the minimum. When we come to costs, the biggest demand comes at the start, when you are tilling this land, digging the pit, putting in manure. That, because of the nature of the soils, it is very hard, and you have to involve many people. And actually, in my experience, I spent most heavily at the stage of digging the pits, because, for example, we are charged 500 for every pit, and at some point we pay even 1,000. And for this garden has 2,600 crops, so you can imagine paying off, and you have to get many people to do it in a short time. And again, another demand is pruning. Pruning, because as you can see, every crop and every branch will have to be pruned. In that case, he hires labor out. People come in, they have their scissors or pruners, and then they go on literally cutting every branch to leave the required number of nodes where the sprouting should be allowed. Otherwise, it can grow wild, and you will not manage it, and you will not get the fruit anyway. When it has put a branch or grown a branch, you count 3 nodes and then cut, so that the 3 are the only ones allowed to sprout. Literally, even if you allowed it to grow beyond 3 nodes, it cannot flower beyond 3 nodes. When you have grown your grapes, after 18 months, you prune them and they do flowering. And after from flowering to harvesting, you need 4 months. Then when you have removed all the fruit, immediately you remove all the leaves and allow the crop to rest for at least a period of 3 weeks.
Many upcoming farmers have a tendency to manage their ventures on phone. Ham's teaching schedule limited his time on the farm. This is how he has managed to resolve this issue over the years.
Here I have a manager, and he has to record especially what he needs to buy for buying chemicals. I pay him salary, and he has to hire labor, because as a manager, his work is mainly to check where there is a need for work, and the community around is always ready to support. When you call them, you hire them on a daily basis. They work. By the end of the day, they need their money, so he has to bring for us a request. I need so much, and then it is documented. His monthly pay has to come.
We then ask the question, what happens at harvest?
When you have come to harvesting, you need these pruners, because you need to cut off the bunch of fruit without harming it or losing the fruit, the berries. You get your baskets, and you hire many people, especially when you are harvesting at once. Then you cut, you put the bunches in the basket. We normally get our weighing scale in the garden, and then we measure to know how many kilograms are coming out.
Climate change, market prices, and natural occurrences like the current pandemic at the other challenges affecting agribusiness and in turn threaten food security. It is during these periods that people gravitate toward food preservation and storage to avoid the spiking food prices, but also to avert critical times of drought, famine, and the unexpected like today's COVID times. This is the basis for Zero Hunger, a sustainable development goal for the Hunger Project is set out to achieve. Sarah is one testimony of this achievement.
My name is Sarah Navakoza. I'm from Namayumba. I'm a teacher as well as a farmer. Being a teacher, I'm this kind of a person who used to entirely depend on the salary. You know, waiting for the salary at the end of the month. When the money comes, I have to make sure the first priority is always food. You have to budget for the food, and I realized that food has been something that has been taking the highest budget. Yeah, you have to make sure you stock, because being a teacher, you wait for the salary. So you have to stock some maize flour, you stock beans, you stock. You even spend things like money on things like matoke, cassava, because you have to feed your family, because you have to eat. So I realized that most of my expense goes on food. So I started thinking of how can I reduce on the cost on food. That's when I realized that I can widen my mind and do something to cut down the costs on food. In doing that, I started small, like growing some sweet potatoes, putting up some cassava plants, growing some matoke, as well as vegetables. So that's how basically I started. But I didn't have wider knowledge about preserving the food, keeping food, having food for a long period of time. Not until there was a training one day at the epicenter that was organized by the Hunger Project. That is something that widened my mind. It changed my mindset that alongside teaching, you can as well do farming, reduce the cost of buying the food, and increase actually on your saving and on your income as a family and as a person. So from the trainings given to me from the Hunger Project, I learned that food can be stored for a long time. How? Like cassava. If cassava has reached its maturity, it gets rotten. So what I do, I get the cassava from the garden, I cut it, I chop it, I dry it. I keep the dried cassava, such that during the time of scarcity, I can use the dried cassava as cassava flour for my family, and sometimes I sell to the people who make different things like the chicken food stuff. They feed their animals, and that earns me a living, and I am as well food secure. So like moringa, I get moringa leaves because they grow and they become expired. You cannot use them when they have overgrown. So I get those when they're still young and they're still fresh. I dry them. I make the powder from the leaves. That powder, I use it in different foodstuffs, like in groundnut sauce. I can use it on tea as tea leaves. It is very nutritious, helps the immunity, and the powder sometimes I sell. And that is, when it comes to the financial part, it helps me a lot. Most of the foodstuffs, I can dry them. Beans, when they are ready, they can, when I get them from the garden, I dry them. I get the maize, I dry the maize. I get the maize flour, I keep it. It can stay for a long time. So that when the gestation period has ended, then I have food in store, and that is food security. I have enough food during the time of harvest and even during the time of scarcity.